Thanks to Massdrop for sponsoring this video. Massdrop uses the power of group buys to save you money, and this is all curated in several different categories, everything from everyday carry to audiophile, ProTech, and even mechanical keyboards. So go ahead and check out Massdrop. Right now, the DX Racer OHIS11 Iron Series chair is back. Now, this is a substantial chair. First off, it's made for guys between 5'11 and 6'3", and it can sport up to 400 pounds of weight. There's a 27-inch aluminum plate, so it's beefy. The arms can go up, down, sideways. It pretty much can do anything. They swivel, they slide forward to back. So you can fix it in a position that's perfect for you. 3-inch casters, 135-degree large angle adjuster. This is one of the toughest racing chairs that's out there. It also comes with pillows for lumbar and also neck support. You can use them or you can leave them off. It's up to you. So go ahead and check out Massdrop. There's a link in the description. And thanks again to them for sponsoring the video. Wendell, have you ever had Switchel? We should drink that.
I've never had
Kentucky,
Switchel.
Right? Never had Switchel? They got this around here in some local place. I'm going to recommend this to people if you're feeling down and want to pick me up. Drink a nice glass of Switchel. They paid us a lot for this thing here. Anyway, it's apple cider vinegar, maple syrup, water, and ginger. Anyway, Wendell, what's going on in Kentucky?
Moonshine. We just do moonshine. I mean, it's not complicated. Moonshine with maybe a sprig of celery, or moonshine with perhaps a dash of cinnamon, but moonshine.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Now I feel alive. The first two articles that we're going to talk about are things that we already knew, but now have been explicitly made explicit by the government. The government. So first off, the NSA is going to routinely start sharing all the data they collect on U.S. citizens with other domestic agencies like the DOJ and the FBI, and also local law enforcement. So this is a new provision that's in the Patriot Act. Put this Switchel over here. That is strong stuff and delicious. Yeah, so this is fun. Now it's just there. I mean, they've always sort of stood behind this defense of, yeah, we're not really spying on Americans, so it's okay. We're spying on people that look different. You know, people with funny hairdos and stuff from other places who do strange things. We're not spying on Americans, you know. No, we wouldn't do that. But now they're just like, oh, yeah, we're going to spy on Americans and we're going to share all the data. And there's nothing you can do about it, no warrants or anything like that. We're just collecting all this data, and that's it. Privacy is pretty much dead. But I guess, Wendell, what do you take, or what's your take on them actually just coming out and just being blatant about it and being like, yep, that's what we're doing?
There's a whole bunch of news stories that we can just roll up into one that are kind of related to this, and that is, you remember that slippery slope that we keep talking about, where it's like we're going to careen down it and it's going to be really crazy? Yeah,
and then everyone says, please take off your tinfoil hats, and then a year later we go, we would take off our tinfoil hats, but they're so damn comfortable, and I'm sorry, but...
It is really, I mean, governments around the world are not wanting to give up power, and they're also scared to death of the citizenry. And this is not really anything that's new. Historically, this has always been true. It's just that now they've got new tools to do it. And so it's really hard to, look at everything with perfectly clear vision today, but you don't have to go very far back in time. You could go all the way, I mean, you could go to the 1980s. There's been enough stuff declassified about terrible things the U.S. government has done in the 80s, and probably your own local government wherever you happen to be. And it should really horrify you. So you probably learned about the civil rights movement in America. Did you also learn about the COINTELPRO program, where American law enforcement and the FBI and some other things were actually spying on completely peaceful groups like breast cancer awareness and, the civil rights movement and PETA and Black Lives Matter, and Oregon actually had to stand up and be like, why are you spying on Black Lives Matter? This is insane. And so here we have some court cases where there was an Albanian living in Brooklyn, and he was swept. They weren't spying on him, they were spying on somebody else, but somehow his email got swept up in that. And there was a court case, and because he was getting ready to go join a militant group somewhere, and so they arrested him. And so it was like, wait a minute, where did this evidence come from? And it's like, oh, it's this giant wiretap email siphon thing. We weren't actually spying on him. We just kind of swept him up. And, he triggered all the right keywords. And so we brought him up on charges. And yeah, he was living lawfully in Brooklyn, New York, but he was from Albania. So I guess because he's not a citizen, that whole thing, I don't know. But the judge said, he didn't have a reasonable expectation of privacy conversing with people in Albania through email, so we can totally spy on him and do all this kind of thing. You combine that with the news story about the FBI changing its privacy policy to say, hey, we can actually get intel on American citizens. The FBI really doesn't have the greatest track record on earth in terms of because theoretically a lot of the stuff in COINTELPRO was legal. Not all of it, but a lot of it was actually lawful surveillance. And so you think about those things that happened in the relatively recent past, you got to wonder what's going on now, especially under this whole veil of secrecy thing. It's like, oh, you can't know. We can't do this thing in terrorists. And it's like, if we're going to do this, let's do it in the open. Let's not do it behind closed doors. Let's not, do as I say, not as I do. Let's not do that, because that leads to things that are even worse.
Well, you know what? The PRISM is now in the open as well, because a judge finally came out and said that PRISM exists. And we've known about PRISM since Edward Snowden leaked all the papers. And that PRISM is basically just the entire surveillance system under the NSA. You guys can go take a look at it, but
that's what swept up the Albanian guy. The judge was like, yeah, we got your data from PRISM. It's cool. You're still guilty. And it's like, what? No, he doesn't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in his email? I'm sorry, what?
So, I mean, the thing about this now is that they're just coming out and saying all of it. So, yeah.
That's not the kind of transparency that I had in mind.
You know what's interesting about this is we're seeing this huge, I think we're actually finally seeing a backlash in this. And someone said something to me the other day. I'm going to get into politics here for just 1 second. So buckle your freaking seatbelts. I know you guys out there with your racing car things that you bought. Go ahead and buckle your seatbelt. So Donald Trump is probably sort of a response to all this nonsense that's going on. And so is Bernie Sanders, because they both don't do things the way that the system wants things to be done. So they're kind of rising to the top, but they're on two different extremes. Now, someone mentioned the other day, they were like, you know what? It seems like the only thing that's going to wake up America is just complete Armageddon. So maybe we should go ahead and just all vote for Donald Trump and bring about Armageddon so we can restart from the ground up and rebuild this thing the right way. Just go ahead and end the world. Just, it's the Etch-a-Sketch, like Eddie Izzard's Etch-a-Sketch into the world scenario. Just, bugger it all. Just end it. I'm not saying vote for Donald Trump. So, but I mean, vote for whoever you want to. I'm not going to stop you. But yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting response that we're seeing here. And I know a lot of people outside of America, they look in, and whenever we travel, they're all like, man, why do you let some of these people have a microphone? Because they just get up on stage and they go, bleh, bleh, and everyone claps and goes, yeah. And like, they're just vomiting. And why do you give them a microphone? I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe we're trying to bring about Armageddon. It might be that way. Anyway, we made a new shirt, political. It's getting a bit of flack on the internet, and I'm kind of glad about that. For multiple reasons, but we made a while back a George Washington shirt that said, I don't party, I'm an independent. Bernie Sanders is the longest standing independent congressperson ever. He's running a Democrat now, obviously. We also made a I don't party, I'm an independent shirt with Bernie Sanders. Now, here's what this is going to do. It's going to start a lot of conversation. And then you can mention the George Washington thing. He was an independent. He said that the two-party system was going to be extremely bad, if not destroy the country. So that's how you get your conversation started when someone walks up and goes, hey, he's a Democrat, man. What are you talking about? You'd be like, yeah, well, listen, let me talk about independent for just a minute. Because this whole two-party thing that, everyone's yelling and screaming about is kind of divisive. All right, enough politics for now.
I don't really want to get involved in the whole political discussion, but I do think that there have been more modern voting systems that I think would be really helpful here. This is if you regard this as sort of an apocalyptic situation for both the Democratic and the Republican parties, maybe this is why we need instant runoff or preferential voting. It's really simple. I can explain it, I think. Logan really likes fish tacos. I don't really like fish tacos. I hate them.
They're delicious, and you have to eat them. If you don't eat fish tacos, there's going to be a problem.
I like Indian food, but for the sake of argument, let's assume that Logan really, really hates Indian food. But we can both agree on sushi. Sushi's a thing. That's completely fine. So if there's more than two of us, obviously, if we both vote for the thing that we want the most, neither of us, half of us is going to be unhappy. But if we can agree on sushi, then that seems reasonable. We could probably get there. And so if we were to vote, say, 10 for, fish tacos and 8 for sushi, and then I voted 10 for Indian food and 8 for sushi. It's like, well, neither one of them win, or it's 10 for sushi, 10 for Indian, and 8 and 8, 16 total for sushi. And so we would have sushi. And that seems reasonable. But,
you know what? If that was the case,
society can't do that.
I feel like the independent candidate would win a lot if that was the case. Hell, we probably would have had Ross Perot. I mean,
people in other countries that have moderate parties, how does that work?
So yeah, that's the store. Also, we only have like 3 or 4 more Land Syndicate tickets left. We're going to cap it at a certain number because then we'll have to rent another generator. And we did the math and was like, yeah, if like an extra 100 people come, it's not going to pay for that damn generator and all the extra expense and everything. So we're gonna cap this after the next few sales. So go ahead and grab your Land Syndicate tickets. And there's a bunch of other cool things. The start of the month is all these multicolored Tech Syndicate shirts, even some ridiculous tie-dye ones that I fancy. And of course the mouse pads. We have ordered more mouse pads, so they keep coming in. You guys keep grabbing them up. But yeah, and whatever you guys buy will be what sticks around in the store as far as the shirt of the month goes. Which color scheme you guys like the best will be probably a permanent fixture on the store. All right, also I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon members who are keeping us alive right now as we move. We got an office. Yes! we got an office, and there's some good news is we've got an office. The bad news is needs new floors, needs new ceiling. We got to knock down all the walls with sledgehammers. But hey, we'll get it done.
And we've got to be clear, none of the money from Patreon or anything else is actually going to pay for the renovations in the office. The landlord is actually doing that. They're just doing it to our spec. So
right. Well, they're going to reimburse us, and we've got like a certain amount of money to spend, which is good. But it's going to mean that it'll take a little bit longer for us to get back into the flow of regular content. But when we do, we have an office that we've basically built ourselves to be whatever we want. So that's going to be cool.
The reason for that is because the offices was previously occupied by some sort of like horrifying dog groomer thing for like the last 25 or 30 years. And I can't communicate to you just the level of disturbing and bad that it is. Like, seriously, I think the landlord is scared to death that the building inspector is going to show up and condemn the place. And so he's like, no, I'll fix it up. It'll be fine. So it will be ours. It's totally going to be ours.
But it's totally... You joke about dog groomers, but I'm pretty sure I've put 2 and 2 together because there's still some stuff left over from the last tenants, and I'm pretty sure it was one of those debt collection companies that calls and harasses people because they've got a big whiteboard up on the wall and they have all the numbers and everything, and then they've got a Nerf slam dunk thing that it's like, yeah, if you hit your goal, slam dunk, you go over and you make a slam dunk. So there's all this. I bet if we had Sherlock Holmes in there, he'd be like, ah, yes, and then here they've called and harassed someone for money. And over here, there's a bunch of old phones and stuff. So I was like, I'm pretty sure it was an old debt collection agency.
And then the dog urine made it so that the only people that could possibly rent it was the debt collectors. And so we get it only after the decades of dog urine have,
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
I don't know.
And once we get back into the swing of things, hopefully we'll be able to hire someone. We've got someone here locally in town that we've been hanging out with, and he might work out, so that would be cool. The money in Patreon will pay for like 1.5 people. A lot of people are like, look at the money, and they're like, holy shit, I'm not giving you guys
it's
any money.
It's a lot of money for one person.
Yeah, in a basement, but we've got, multiple different apartments, an office downtown, and then multiple employees. So when you think of it that way, it really helps, but it is not paying all the bills.
So getting multiple employees and making like everything, like formalizing everything, putting it all together. So
right now I'm asking you guys to throw money at it if you want to see some amazing content, because in order to do that, we're going to have to get a slightly bigger team, just slightly bigger. We're all at capacity right now. And it'll be better once we get the office finished, because then I won't be, doing all that nonsense. I'll be able to focus on what I want to focus on. All right, back to this. Okay, let's talk about the FBI for just a minute. So let's look back in time, shall we? Maybe a little bit of a history lesson. You have McCarthyism, right? And during that period of time, if you talked to a communist or you were seen doing anything communist, or if you were just sympathizing or even maybe possibly having a communist idea, well, you were labeled as a communist, and that was the lowest form of low. And it was a kind of a dark time for our democracy, where dissent was just labeled as communism. Well, now, a lot of times with the whole security and surveillance and all that nonsense, if you are on the wrong side of that, well, now it's just terrorism, and you're labeled a terrorist, and that's the worst thing that you can have now. Being a terrorist is the new communist. So, Wendell, what are you making of all this nonsense with Apple and the FBI from that angle?
So Apple and the FBI are basically at each other's throats, with the FBI openly calling Apple things like, unpatriotic and, you're trying to get, you're trying to undermine democracy, and you're letting the terrorists win, and all this kind of stuff. And I read this, and in my mind, it's echoes of the McCarthyism era in America. And if you're not familiar with that, you owe it to yourself to go and read more and learn about things that are happening. It's really hard, while events are unfolding, to really step back and look at things objectively and look at things with a clear head. People are involved. You can get emotional. You can definitely make the emotional appeal argument that, lives would be saved and terrorism is evil and we have to root out these terrorists. And a lot of these arguments have already been made originally many, many times over throughout history. But before terrorism, it was communism. And it's like we were really worried about communism. We went on witch hunts for communism in Hollywood screenwriters and all sorts of terrible things. We mentioned COINTELPRO. And if you really, really want to be horrified about what people in power will do to citizen groups that try to organize for positive change, you should go read about COINTELPRO. Because that's, at least for America, that's really interesting. And I'm sure that the GCHQ and British organizations in Australia and other places have their own horror stories. But it's not, when you're looking at it from a historical perspective, you're not looking at it judgmentally. You're looking at it to learn from. I'm going to look at this and see what we did wrong and try to avoid stepping down the path to do that. And so we learned about the Albanian guy and PRISM and all this kind of thing. But now Apple and IBM, or Apple and the FBI are at each other's throats, and a lot of the arguments and a lot of the stuff that they're saying really reeks of McCarthyism. And it's like, do we really want to step down that road? Do we really sort of want to go that way? I'm kind of terrified that it's already too late, that we're already headed in this direction. I mean, can you imagine McCarthy with access to the information on your iPhone? I mean, the McCarthyism trials during that period of time that would take completely innocuous things and totally twist them. It's like, our communist investigators were following you around, and we found out that you had an association with so-and-so who is a confirmed member of the Communist Party, where it's, maybe they just knew somebody, or maybe, a lot of the Hollywood screenwriters that got swept up with the whole communism thing were sort of romantic with the idea that, their work product, they were watching the stories that they wrote, they weren't getting a lot of money, but the studios were getting an insane amount of money. And so they were like, communism is the answer. We look at it now and it's like, well, it's a little bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it was really nothing more than a romantic idea that they had. They weren't out to overthrow the presidency or anything like that. It was just healthy dissent. And so we sort of had an overreaction, almost like an allergic reaction. And I really hope that people realize that the whole terrorism thing is almost like an allergic reaction. We've definitely overcompensated to the point that it is completely ridiculous. And I really wish there were more objective people that could step back and look at it for what it is.
I really enjoy some of the comments, or some of the just the phrasing and that sort of thing. It's so sensational, and this is not just the PR from the government or the PR from Apple. These are actual court documents. Like, this is a filed motion from the government side saying Apple's rhetoric is not only false but also corrosive of the very institutions that are best able to safeguard our liberty and our rights. Whew. Corrosive
America.
To the Jesus. And so Apple, they're firing back, and these are also on the record. I mean, these are court documents. Everyone should beware, because it seems like disagreeing with the Department of Justice means you must be evil and anti-American. So I mean, these are huge, sensational things that you would think would be just said on a YouTube video or something. You'd expect something like that to come out of my mouth, like just some sensational stuff with some facts behind it. That's what I do. That's what you'd expect. But right here, you've got it coming back and forth from these two, from Apple and the FBI. So it's kind of ridiculous. And yeah,
you get into a situation where these kind of things lead to a chilling effect, and that sort of relates to our next story, which is about Oliver Stone meeting with Edward Snowden. One of the things that came out of that is Oliver Stone. He's making a movie. I mean, that's what he does. Oliver Stone, if you're not familiar, he's a director. And they moved from the U.S. to Germany because they were afraid that the NSA would be spying on them. And it's like, really? I mean, Stone doesn't have any documents anymore, and it's Oliver Stone. He's making a documentary. Do we really need to turn our intelligence apparatus toward a Hollywood director? I mean, we're doing that now. And COINTELPRO, it's like,
I mean, a lot of the other side of this thing is that he was having trouble getting this made in America. He couldn't get any investors. No one wanted to touch this with a 10-foot pole. And then, of course he was worried about, security, surveillance, all kinds of different things. I mean, if he made it on American soil, I could possibly see people showing up to strong arm him into editing things. They demand, I mean, like China, when you're making a movie in China, they typically want to read the script before they allow you to make it. I can see the government doing something like that because it's Snowden, it's a touchy subject. So making it in Germany allowed him some freedom. And he was finally able to fund the film with, I think, money from, Germany, and I forget where else. One other country,
France.
maybe France, yeah. So, of course, France threw some money at this. But he had trouble over there, even in Germany, because some of the companies who have ties to America wanted nothing to do with the film. For instance, BMW, they wanted nothing to do with this film. They're like, yeah, I'm not sure where a BMW would have been in the movie, but he specifically mentioned that one. The other thing that's kind of interesting, and it's got the NSA and the government possibly a little worried, and also I'm kind of a little bit worried for Oliver Stone now, because he had clandestine meetings with Snowden on a few different times. And, it seemed like he'd had a few different meetings and got a little chummy with him. He even took the final version of the movie over to Snowden's place to show him. He knew him well enough to say, oh, he's a night owl. He's working on the American schedule, even though he's in Russia. His longtime girlfriend is over there now. And, he seemed to know him okay, or decently. So, yeah, Oliver Stone is hanging out with Snowden. Is that grounds for calling him a terrorist enabler? Oliver Stone, you terrorist enabler. You are destroying the institutions that could best keep us safe, sir. How dare you?
All we need to do is declare him an enemy combatant, and that problem will be over. I guarantee those words were uttered by somebody other than some bozo on YouTube.
Yeah, they're like, I wonder, we could possibly take him down with a drone and make it look like an accident. We heard about
we have
something.
been using them domestically. That came out as news this week, too. It's like, it turns out we've been using drones domestically. Oops, did we not mention that?
They're like, yeah, but we don't want to drone on about this, so let's just go ahead and talk about Donald Trump, shall we? Maybe he's just a big distraction. What are they doing while we're watching him throw minorities out of rallies? What's really going on? What is going on? Love that phrase. What is going on? All right, let's talk about the FCC, shall we? So the FCC, Tom Wheeler, I still don't know how to feel about him. He's becoming less of a dingo.
I'm starting to change my mind about him, maybe.
I know. But it's like this. We left a dingo with the baby, and the baby's still alive. What's going on here? So so far that's basically what's happened. Are you gonna do anything about the dingo? No. He's totally tame, domesticated. Yeah, domesticated dingo. But he's still a dingo. Yeah, but he's not gonna eat the baby. Oh, okay. Well, I guess he's not gonna eat the baby then. That's kind of the way I feel right now. But anyway,
two bits of news about that. One is that the FCC is considering rules that would make ISPs require customers to opt in to share information. So there was a court case, the Verizon super cookies. We mentioned that here in American news. They got fined for the super cookies that you couldn't turn off that uniquely identified an individual to websites and basically anything in the unencrypted HTTP headers. They were only fined $1.25 million, which I feel like they made a lot more money than that. So why would they stop?
Somebody laughed all the way to the bank there.
Kind of because of that and some other stuff ISPs are doing, the FCC is considering rules that will make ISPs get permission to share your personal information. Meanwhile, Congress is punishing Tom Wheeler by making him show up. It's like Groundhog Day for Tom Wheeler. He keeps having to show up for these congressional hearings to answer for, what are you doing with broadband? What are you doing with this net neutrality? And they keep
you're destroying the investments. They're saying things like, you know what? Since your crap rules that you've been throwing around, no more investments. And he's like, I have papers right here. They're like, nope. We've talked. Here's what they're saying. They say that, listen, we've talked to the executives from companies like Comcast and AT&T, and they tell us that it's bad for investment. And then Tom Wheeler's like, well, I've got the papers right here from the independent studies, and he's been keeping toe to toe with them.
It's actually more damning than that. Like, Wheeler actually said in open session in Congress that it's like, look, I've heard that before. You said it repeatedly. I've been here several times. Just because you keep repeating it doesn't make it true. I've got, and it's like, I'm sure that you have, you've been talking to somebody and they've been saying something, but I've got the reports, the filings from the SEC. These are publicly traded companies. They must make reports to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. In these reports, they're saying that they're investing in their broadband, and the broadband is a source of record profits for them. And if they are lying to the SEC, there is criminal penalties that will be associated with that. And so if you'd like, Senator, we'll just bring that out in open session here, these SEC filings. And if your stuff is something that has actually been said publicly, or information that is misrepresented to the shareholders, then somebody's going to have to answer for this criminally, because the two statements are in conflict. And the senator just kind of backed off.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I'm going to go back really quick and just mention something about the data collection, because I think it's quite an intelligent scheme here. He has it set up into 3 different buckets as far as the data collection from the ISPs and cable providers. There's the first bucket is stuff that you have to, as soon as you sign the contract, it's basic stuff like your name and your address and all that stuff. You have to give them that when you sign up or whatever. Then there's a second bucket that you don't have to give them, but you're automatically opted in. And that's, stuff like marketing data and all that. So you're opted into that one by default. Kind of wish you were opted out of that one, but it's sort of it's a give and take. It's a pragmatic approach. So that's the second bucket. And then the third bucket is just basically giving them the go ahead to do almost anything. And that one you have to opt into. So that one's kind of just, I don't think anyone's going to opt into it. I don't think a lot of people are going to opt out of bucket 2. But I know our viewers out there who now know about this, if it works, then you'll know, hey, you can just go in and opt out of the second bucket, as it were. So just keep an eye on this. It's good for your privacy, and do not opt into the third bucket. That's just ridiculous. So
I'll go
there's
so
that.
far as to say that Mr. Wheeler might be an interesting person, and I would not mind to share a meal with him. So, and learn more about him and what his motives are and what makes him tick. I think that would probably be pretty interesting.
That would be pretty interesting. You're not a dingo anymore. I'm sorry. Can we hang out now? I kind of want to know what he's doing too, because he used to be a lobbyist for the same companies now that he is bothering. He's agitating these companies. Did he get really angry and trick them into making him the FCC chair? Maybe he got screwed by these companies, and he's like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I can't sleep at night because I've got a conscience. He obviously seems to have a conscience. And they keep making me do this stuff and giving me money, and they just keep screwing me. So you know what? I'm going to trick them into making me the FCC head, and then we'll see. Then we'll see. Maybe he did that. I don't know. We're just throwing things out there. All right, let's talk about Tesla for just 1 second. The new gigafactory is going to be entirely off-grid. They've got a ton of solar panels and also some wind turbines on the neighboring hills. So the entire thing is going to be off-grid. What's interesting about this is they also said no natural gas. They want it to be a zero-emission facility. And the gigafactory is where they're going to be making all the batteries for their upcoming cars. It's going to be, I guess once they get this finished, this one factory will be able to keep up with, it'll be able to match the entire production of the rest of the world. So that's kind of interesting. And there'll be, of course, 35 gigawatt hours of lithium-ion batteries is what they'll be able to make there. That's a lot. So what's interesting about this is you see stuff like this where people live off the grid. And I've seen stories like this. And I don't know, some major law enforcement agency will come in and kick all their doors down and break all their solar panels and be like, get back on the grid, you bunch of hippies. So I wonder how that would play out if, since these guys are off the grid. I wonder if they have a different standards. I don't know. Have you seen that before, where they just do that kind of nonsense, like in California and stuff?
I don't think it's gotten quite that bad, but it is. There have been some tensions between electric grid providers and solar, because the electrical grid is not really set up to accept electricity from solar production people. Really, it really comes down to energy storage. If we had a grid that could accept solar during the day, and then solar homes could get electricity back from the grid at night, that's really the best situation, because battery technology is awful. Batteries don't last very long. There's a lot of problems with battery technology as far as solar goes. The best thing to do would be to get the utilities cooperation and have, basically the solar panels feed the grid. And in other places, your electric meter will actually run backwards when that happens, and that's sort of been accepted as the status quo. But some installers have installed that without the utilities' permission, which is, creates problems at the substation and creates other problems because the equipment at the substation is not designed to deal with that. So that can kind of be problematic, and that's some of what you may be talking about. But it is really interesting that California seems to be adamant on not upgrading the grid to be more tolerant of these things, whereas in places like rural Oregon, they've been a little bit more embracing of this kind of thing. It's like, oh, you mean we can have solar plus the grid? Oh, this will actually work out really well. So it's an interesting dichotomy that California is like, no, we must maintain the status quo with our awful power grid, which brownouts a lot and has problems.
Yeah, since moving to Oregon, I've learned a lot of interesting things about California just by, like, hey, Oregon, we do things the right way here. And then as soon as you go across the border, it'll be all backwards. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Why do they do it like that? And they're like, I don't know. So you find out some interesting things like that. I also want to mention people here in Oregon are very accepting of just about everybody, whereas in some other places in the country, they'd be like, we are the best damn people on the earth. Everyone else is dead. People here are just like, yeah, it's cool, whatever. So thanks, everybody in Oregon, for being that way. Back to Tesla. Let's look over at Singapore. And I want to talk about something interesting. So there's a gentleman here, Mr. Joe Nguyen. And
this was actually debunked.
It was debunked?
Well, this happened, but the people in Singapore filled out the form wrong when they were doing the calculation. They divided by 1.6 times 1.6, and they should have divided by 1.6 twice. And when they divide by 1.6 twice, it comes in way under, and there's no surcharge. They just did the math wrong on a form.
Well, anyway, I do want to talk about something that has to do with this, and that is the carbon footprint of an electric vehicle. Because a lot of people, they think of them as being completely emission-free, and that's mainly what I wanted to talk about here. So, but now my whole segue and the reason to talk about it is it's based on lies. But you know what? It's America. We can do those things. Like, we can base things on lies and still get away with it. So let's talk about stuff based on lies. So the carbon footprint of an electric vehicle. Does someone out there have some data? Because I'd like to see that. That'd be interesting to just sit back and take a look at, how much, or how much the electricity that you pull off the grid, how much of an impact that has as far as pollution goes. I imagine in places where there's a ton of, I guess, solar power and that sort of thing, who cares? It's all clean. And also here in Oregon, as of this week, it's the first state to completely abolish the use of coal. So no more coal here in Oregon. So that's going to clean things up quite a bit for people in the area who have electric cars and that sort of thing. They'll have a smaller footprint than other places, but it might be interesting to sit down and actually look at that side of things and just get the idea in your brain that electric vehicles don't pollute at all. Get that out of your mind, because they do a little bit. I mean, anything that's pulling power from the grid somewhere has some sort of a footprint. Until we go completely renewable, that's just the way it's going to be. But I don't know. We can think about that, or maybe even make a video doing a sort of an investigation about that to sort of, I guess, make it more balanced as far as the way people think about these electric cars. That might be nice. I don't know. Anyway, what's next on the menu here? Hey, the Chinese government and this Microsoft thing. We got a bunch of Microsoft stuff to talk about, and I think Wendell's probably going to cover a lot of this. But the Chinese government has been a beacon of transparency. How about that? So Microsoft, right? They've got all these all these patents that have to do with Android, all these patents that they're using to say, hey, whenever someone sells an Android phone, we need to get some money. There's a whole suite of different patents they say that Android is infringing, and they've pretty much just made deals with a lot of the different companies out there that whenever they sell an Android phone, they get some money. I think Microsoft makes almost as much money off of each phone as Google does because of all these patents. And they've done a really interesting thing. They've been able to keep all these patents secret, like the whole portfolio of them. They've been able to just not. You can go online and you can look at all the patents; those are there. But the ones that specifically apply to all this Android stuff, they've been able to just like keep it in a little group, and then they go over to Motorola and they say, "Hey, we got all these patents. You better pay us." And then they go over to whatever company that's making an Android device and like, "Well, Motorola's paying us, so you better pay us too, Samsung, because Motorola is paying us." And they use that as leverage. It's kind of weird. Anyway, China is becoming a huge market for Android devices. In fact, when I was over there, it's a huge market for Apple devices as well. And people over there the middle class is actually quite strong. So a lot of devices are being sold over there. Now, Microsoft, they've started trying to do those same practices over in China. Chinese government was like, great, go ahead and list all of those patents, please. And they put them on a Chinese website.
China,
so that's kind of funny.
Transparency.
Yeah, really. But you know what this is going to do? This is going to shake the entire core of Microsoft's money-making strategy for this. It's going to shake that because now all these companies, that now you've got Samsung and Motorola and LG and all these companies who've just been paying Microsoft and not always knowing all the different patents. They just don't want to get in trouble. So they're like, yes, we'll pay the freaking fee because everyone else is paying the freaking fee. Well, now you know that they've got a staff sitting there on the Chinese website just reading through it going, oh, does our thing really violate that? What is this? A phone with a mustache? We don't violate that. Just like whatever. They're looking through, and right now they're going to really figure out what is and isn't the case.
It's also true that the patent situation worldwide for software really isn't great, because the rest of the world pretty much has caught on that software patents generally are not good, generally are not used to encourage innovation and protect, first to invent inventors or anything like that. In America, we're sort of on the precipice of that. That hasn't actually happened yet. But like in the European Union, for example, software patents are not really much of a thing there anymore. In America, we're
wonderful.
not quite that enlightened yet, but we're getting there. And so the thing that was secret here, I mean, patents are open. Anybody can go look at whatever you've patented and see all of the details for the patent. And that's the thing, and that's what patents are for. The secret part here is which patents from Microsoft's portfolio does Microsoft feel infringes on Android devices. And so if you came up with particularly successful Android whatever, Microsoft might come knocking on your door and say, oh, you violated our patents. And you might have without even realizing it, or you might have, there might be something in the patent that has become so ubiquitous that it's like, no, I just used a library. I didn't really realize that was a thing. So it's really hard to know. But now the Chinese have publicized a list, accidentally or on purpose, of the things that Microsoft feels are infringing. And I'm sure that about 80% of these are just comically hilarious, and the remaining 20% are probably teeth-grindingly annoying that can probably be worked around in software. But this is the kind of future, I think, that Microsoft has in mind in terms of leveraging open source. So Microsoft's got some other stuff they've been doing with open source. They released SQL Server for Linux, a preview version, signaling their intent to release a real version of SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server for Linux. They also did another interesting thing designed to piss off Larry Ellison, and that is if you have an Oracle license, you can now get an equivalent license for SQL Server for free from Microsoft. So it's like, oh, if you're an Oracle customer, here, have a free SQL Server license and see how that works. This is really designed a lot for government customers, because Oracle has really been shaking down government customers in the UK and the US. And it's like, oh, you need licenses. Somebody in the UK got pissed off, the government facility, and they found that they had like 135 Oracle licenses per employee in their division. And it's like, why do we need 135 licenses for Oracle and so Microsoft is like, ooh, business opportunity. And so they're saying, oh, we can do SQL Server for Linux, and also if you use Oracle, here, have a free. Microsoft's general strategy in the Halloween documents, all the way back with, like, I think Ray Ozzie and some of the other people, was embrace, extend, extinguish. And I don't know if this is saying that Satya Nadella is sort of adopting that mantra, or if he genuinely just wants to coexist. I can't imagine that they would really want to peacefully coexist with Linux and Linux-derived things like Android. So this list of patents is deeply interesting, but I only hope that it hastens the end of software patents.
But I want to mention one more thing about this. So they're coming out and they're acting like they're all loving open source and they're loving Linux and all that stuff, but we really have to be careful because they're becoming a patent troll in a lot of these areas as well, just like with the whole Android thing. But we have companies like Canonical, I mean, they're the team who works on Ubuntu. They are saying that, while they're being nice on one area, they're actually trying to borrow features from Linux, like really interesting features from Linux. And then it's like that whole meme where it's like, someone hands you something and they're like, here, I made this. And you're like, you made this. And they look up and go, I made this. So that's what's happening right now is they're getting this thing and they're like, Linux made this? No. Microsoft made this. And then they're patenting it. And then they're going back to Linux and being like, yeah, that open source stuff, yeah, we've got a patent on that now, even though you guys invented it. And they're kind of bullying around some of the open source developers' projects, some versions of Linux. So we have to be really careful when you look at Microsoft's intentions, because Microsoft seems to love to take things, make them, for themselves, polish them up a little bit, and then put up a nice walled garden around it and start attacking anyone else who's doing the same thing. It's kind of scary when you think of it. It's very, very bad business practice. Speaking of very bad business practices, you want to talk about their upgrade tactics? Those are kind of funny too. So, yeah, the latest patch
versus Microsoft, round one, fight.
that's pretty funny because I'll let you go into this one here. It's it's really funny.
So there's a security update that is bundled as a security update, and it really does update the security for Internet Explorer and Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. But bundled in the security update is an ad generator to try to get you to upgrade to Windows 10. So system administrators that manage, which patches come from where and all this kind of thing, system administrators in even small organizations have all of their computers set up to get Microsoft updates from a central machine in the organization that then gets the updates from Microsoft. And so they go in and approve, and the system administrators can control when the operating systems need to be updated. And so this is sort of backdoored a Windows 10 upgrade widget, add, gotcha, whatever, into Windows 7 and 8 systems that may be running inside a business. And this security update is like, oh, you should totally upgrade to Windows 10. And there have been at least 5 or 6 patches to older versions of Windows designed to try to get you to upgrade to Windows 10. I really, at this point, I don't know why Microsoft would be doing this except to try to, bypass system administrators and just trick the users into upgrading to Windows 10. We've even had reports of Windows 10 automatically installing on Windows 7 and 8 machines. And I don't know if that's really true or if that's just that, somebody got a misleading dialog box where it was like, I'm going to do some amazing stuff, and you've got a giant OK button, and then like no, don't do the amazing stuff right now, and very small text at the bottom. And if you read into it, it's like the giant OK button would install Windows 10. I don't know. But it's definitely been designed to be confusing enough that enough people have had their computer mysteriously upgraded to Windows 10 that they're going online and being like, this thing upgraded to Windows 10. I don't think I okayed that. I don't. What's going on here?
That happened to me, as a matter of fact. One day while we were doing the tech, the thing popped up and it was like, it didn't say Windows 10 upgrade. It just said, your computer is ready to restart. Please click now to restart or click schedule later. And it was like for a better time. And so we were in the middle of doing the tech. I didn't click anything. I just clicked the X. I closed it out. I was like, go away. I'll deal with you later. Next day, I come back into the room. The computer has Windows 10. And I was like, why? What? Because I literally only use the capture rig for doing the tech and other videos in the studio. So I just basically minimized whatever was on the screen. And it didn't say yes or no. It was just like warning me that, hey, we're gonna schedule this for a better time. If you're busy right now, it's going to be scheduled. But there's some updates. I didn't know it meant the damn update to Windows 10. So yeah. But yeah, it was an update. And it also invalidated my serial number, which is nice because I had a Russian serial number, which gray market should be legal.
It was a legit Russian serial number.
It was a legit Russian serial number.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that you would legitimately buy from Microsoft Russia.
For $15. Anyway, speaking of Microsoft, let's move on and check out this interesting new program that I'm going to probably encourage some of you guys to take a look at. It's called Wire. Now, Wire is essentially Skype. Some of the guys who worked on Skype have gone off and made their own program. It's very similar in functionality. You can do the calls, you can do the video chat, which actually has pretty good, Kane and I tested it out, has pretty good quality. It lacks some features like being able to drag and drop images and stuff from your browser into the chat program, but it's a pretty good start. The other interesting thing about this is, let's go ahead and, it says always encrypted. I'll go ahead and click on that. So it's always encrypted. And the servers are in Switzerland. So they're saying, hey, that's how we're going to keep everything secure. And they're guaranteeing no banner ads and pop-ups and takeovers and no profiling. They don't sell the data to companies. I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know how they're making money. They have a pretty slick app for Android. And you can go and get all the different apps and stuff, Android and iOS or whatever. And, this could be interesting as we move forward to the future. I know that Microsoft has been sort of limiting the features and also the platforms of Skype. So this might be an interesting solution. But it is in its infancy, and I really want to know how they're making money, because it's pretty slick, and there's a decent team involved, and they're not doing any ads, no profiling, and full-on encryption. So how are they making money? Donations or what? I don't know. Donations would be cool. I'll throw $5 at it if I can get away from Skype and other programs like that. Just add more features. Cool. All right, next up on the list here, Hyperloop. So some companies in Europe, like Slovakia, possibly also Austria, they might be putting in a Hyperloop, and they're talking to a San Francisco-based company, one of the companies who's working on some of the Hyperloop stuff here, called Hyperloop Transportation Technologies. They basically opened it up to Europe and said, hey, does anybody over in Europe want a Hyperloop? I mean, you guys already have a pretty good train system going on there, but it could be a very efficient way to get around Europe, and the cities are also relatively close together. So Slovakia was like, hey, that might be a cool thing, and we can go between here and Vienna, and maybe here and somewhere else. Maybe here in Prague, over in the Czech Republic, that'd be cool. So, or they could go to my favorite place, which is Amsterdam, Germany. It's my favorite city in Europe. Good old Amsterdam, Germany. People get so mad at me when I say that. Anyway, yeah. It might be interesting to see what develops with that. A Hyperloop-like transportation system would be amazing. That would be so freaking amazing. LA to San Francisco in 30 minutes. Like, I've been looking at flights around, and it's just like, why don't we have this already? We should be working on this as our new infrastructure. All right. Moving right along. Oh, yeah. Man. Slovakia. Sorry, I opened up a picture of Slovakia mountains. Look at those mountains. Sorry. There's some interesting developments with CRISPR, and I'm kind of excited about the future of the world with CRISPR. And CRISPR is the thing that allows you to manipulate DNA. As until now, they've been using a version that essentially tries to remove traits instead of silencing them. Like, it would just be like, okay, let's remove this stuff. And the success rate wasn't always as high for that because DNA sometimes would either repair itself or something else would happen. I'm not a biologist, so I'm not 100% sure how that works. But right now, they've found that they've had a higher success rate with the new version of CRISPR called CRISPR-I, and that stands for interference. And what that one does is it goes in and essentially just mutes or turns off certain features. I guess it's almost like a Boolean value. It just goes in and changes a 1 to a 0 instead of removing that or deleting that bit of code. It just says, let's just turn that off. So that one has actually had a higher success rate. That's kind of cool. And who knows what we'll be able to do with this.
I never can get over it when they call this the gene CRISPR. It's like the gene CRISPR. It's like, what is it? Is it like the veggie CRISPR in the fridge? No.
The gene CRISPR.
That's not.
I have no idea.
It probably is good that they're not cutting things out because I'm not a biologist, but it seems like messing with things by cutting them out versus silencing them. Cutting them out probably could lead to cancer. Silencing them, probably less chance of cancer. I don't know. Maybe somebody in the comments can let us know. But it definitely looks like we're building all the tools that we need to take control of DNA in a programmatic sense. And so if DNA is a biological program, this is sort of the tool for beginning to work in that language. So that's kind of nice.
All right, let's talk about CD Projekt Red. They're probably the biggest independent game development studio out there. I mean, they're still independent because they're making the games and publishing them themselves. And I think that they've got a really interesting business model for the future. But what I want to really talk about right now is, they came out with, they released some numbers. They also released a new mission statement. But The Witcher series has sold 20 million copies. 20 million. For reference, a game like Fable, that's Microsoft's Lionhead Studios. Fable's been around for a while. Several different versions of the game, more than the Witcher. The Witcher only has three games and some expansion packs. Fable only sold 7 million titles, or 7 million copies. So they didn't actually make a lot of money because Lionhead was a big, expensive studio that took years to develop games. They had to put a lot of money into those games, and then they only sold 7 million copies. They made some money, but it wasn't a very profitable thing, and that's why Microsoft just closed the doors at Lionhead. And even the leaders at Lionhead were like, yeah, we weren't selling as much as we thought, and it was expensive. So when you look at CD Projekt Red, they don't have a lot of overhead. I mean, they have a lot of overhead, but they don't have a lot of there's not a middleman involved, so there's not someone stealing a lot of their overhead. They're selling directly to the gamers. Of course, these games are available on Steam. But one other thing that's interesting about these guys, just their business models. They own GOG, which is Good Old Games, and it's a nice platform. I'm gonna scroll down here, and the GOG mission statement is really interesting. So they want to create several different games. They also want to be, if you look up at their mission statement here, they also want to be one of the top 3 video game developers in the world, which is huge. They want to make a bunch of revolutionary RPGs. So they want to make a bunch of games. Now they want to start shifting the GOG platform into something more like Steam, where you can connect with your friends and play some of these future games that they're developing using their platform to sync up, join games, matchmake, and all that sort of thing. So that's step 1. I think at step 2, we could actually see a platform that is more like Steam, but it's more of it's not an open source platform, but it's more open in the sense that there's no DRM on these games. You can play them offline. You don't have to worry about phoning home and all that sort of thing. There's no DRM whatsoever on these games, which is a beautiful thing. But they're still making money despite their policies of just being like, okay, guys, we're going to trust the audience to be cool. We're trying to be cool. No DRM. Have fun. Enjoy our games. Thanks. You guys bought 20 million copies, even though there's no DRM. That's a pretty... If the rest of the industry could just look at this, companies like EA, and Activision and that sort of thing that put ridiculous amounts of DRM. What was the latest one that just came out that has the always-on DRM that's really draconian? Someone in the comments will tell me. Can't I remember this?
The new physical Blu-ray media has that. It's like, oh, you want to play this
Yes.
Blu-ray media? I got a phone home. And it's like, how about I just don't participate anymore? I don't care, whatever.
It's the new Hitman game. The new Hitman game has such draconian DRM that it's always connected, and if you break connection, if your internet connection goes down, you can't play the game. It drops you out of the game. It's like, sorry, you're not connected to our server anymore. We don't know what's going on. That's really ridiculous. This is the complete opposite of that, and these guys are doing a very good job over at CD Projekt Red. So, hey, good for those guys. I can't wait for Cyberpunk 2077. That's going to be an interesting game. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to plug the music now. Go get the music. We're working on this Zweihander game. It's actually getting a bit awesome. So I'm going to give you guys something to look at here as far as the Zweihander game goes. All this stuff here, it's all secret. All these secrets. You guys can see it, though. But let's show you guys something. How about creature modeling? Yeah, this one's fun. I will show you this guy that Just Zero has been working on. I can't make it full screen, but you guys can see a little version of it right here. That's our Facebeard character. He's ready to fight. So yeah, we're getting some bad guys going for you guys. We're getting a bunch of different props for you guys, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to develop. Remember, all your sales go toward paying the developers now as we work on the demo for the Kickstarter. I've been putting a lot of hours in myself in a program called Artsy Draft, which is the same program that CD Projekt Red uses to develop their games. I might make some videos showing you the workflow. There's a lot of things that are just not secret about this. I don't care about some of the dialogue trees that don't have bits of plot in them that are just a bit of fun, or something like a dialogue tree inside a tavern or something with a side quest. I'll show you guys some of that, how we develop it. But Artsy Draft is essentially a program that can work in tandem with programs like Unity and Unreal Engine. It costs a little bit of money. There's a version of it on Steam for I think $10 a month or something. But it essentially allows you to go in and create all your items, create all your characters, create your dialogue trees, and then it gives you an XML file that you can import into Unreal Engine. Unity has a plugin, so that might be really nice. But we're using the Unreal Engine. I hope they make a plugin for that soon. Somebody out there, that'd be nice. If anyone out there has ever done any work making Artsy Draft work with Unreal Engine, email me because I'll pay you money to write us a plugin. It would really, really help. Because right now we're doing it the long way. We're taking it and bringing in an XML file, then we have to assign some variables, and put them into the blueprints. But it works. And I've been doing that quite a bit lately. It's a ton of fun making dialogue trees. I had no idea. Now I understand why some of these guys like, Tim Schafer and all those other guys, why they started doing this a long time ago. It's just like a ton of fun. It's like create your own storybook. Anyway, that's been fun. And yeah, what's next on the list? We got more video game news. A new map for the reboot of Unreal Tournament, DM Chill, has been released. It's an oldie, but it's not as he almost said two for it. It's not as iconic as Facing Worlds. I'm waiting for them to release that one. But Wendell, have you played the new Unreal Tournament much?
I haven't. I've been meaning to play the beta, but I've never gotten around to it.
Something's weird about it. Someone else maybe out there in the comments can maybe give me some pointers, but I just can't aim. Like in Unreal, I shoot like 40-50% usually in Quake. In this game, I shoot like 8% accuracy. I don't know what the deal is with if there's some mouse acceleration going on or something. I thought I turned it all off, but it just doesn't feel as fluid. I'm getting over 60 FPS, so I don't know. But anyway, I did like the original Unreal Tournament, and I want to like this game. So that's about it. Do we have any Rant 30s coming up, Wendell, or anything like that?
I did shoot the encryption video. It now requires editing.
So stay tuned for that pretty soon. We're going to be signing our contract. We went back and forth 10 times. We'll be signing our contract at the new office tomorrow. So, yeah.
Oh, God. Please don't abandon us now. For the love of all that is holy, please. Please.
You guys won't see me for a little while. No, we'll make... we've got about 400 vlog videos coming up, showing you guys how that we... no. We'll do like one vlog, maybe two. We do like one vlog of us knocking down the walls with sledgehammers because that's kind of badass, and everybody wants to see it. And we'll do another that's just Kane installing the network, and that'll actually be Kane and Charlie, a couple of guys who really know what they're doing when it comes to installing low voltage cabling. We're gonna run the cables, install the wall jacks, run it back home to servers and switches and that sort of thing. we'll show you how we'll just show you how all that works in the office, and show you the best practices. And these guys are qualified to do this. Like Kane he's installed low voltage cabling at power plants. And I mean, he's done lots of offices and lots of homes, but we're talking like industrial power plants. So he knows what he's doing. And then Charlie is a licensed fiber optic technician. So we have two guys here, basically on staff for this. That'll be able to give you guys some insights. So stay tuned for those videos. We'll make them as soon as we can. And we actually have someone locally who I'm going to pay to come over and help us shoot the videos. So the burden's not on our shoulders, and then he's going to edit them. So it'll be like, yay, content. The way it should be. All right, guys. Thanks again, all the supporters, tech supporters, Patreon people. And if I didn't mention you, then I don't care. No, I do care. All right, guys. We'll see you later.